markets upbeat has now turned into a worry. The expectation is that COVID-related disruptions in the world's second largest economy could hamper demand for goods. Some reports suggest that how China reopens could play out to be one of the biggest unknown factors, given that some estimates suggest there could be more than 2.1 million COVID-related deaths in the world's most populous country. To speak more on this, I'm joined today by Ajay Bagga, Chairman of Elements Platform and market expert, Dr. Subhash Salunke, member of the National Task Force on COVID-19, and Steve Sosnick, Chief Strategist, Interactive Brokers. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm just going to spend a few minutes first on how the markets have reacted to this. And Mr. Bagga, let me come to you. Clearly, that worry is now growing. And the worry seems to be with the Chinese economy's response to COVID-19 more than anything else and to this latest outbreak, isn't it?
Yeah, and the issue is the uncertainty, Tamanna, because we don't know, the numbers are not being reported now. Anybody and everybody is giving forecasts that 40%, 60% of the population will get infected over the next 3 months. So China, as the factory of the world, as the supplier to the world, is very key in the supply chain for the world. And any disruption there would have ramifications for the overall growth of the global economy, on inflation, as well as on supply chains. So the good news is a lot of the inventory for the holiday season has already been delivered. Given that the Chinese Lunar New Year holidays start from 21st Jan, a lot of a lot of the production has already been delivered globally. So we have some time to react to this, but markets are really running in the dark with no idea of what is the actual situation. We are seeing videos of hospitals, crematoriums, pharmacies running out of medicines, but the government has stopped reporting the numbers, and it's that uncertainty which is roiling markets.
Um, that's the problem, and there are varying narratives on what's happening. Mr. Sosnick, let me come to you on that. So you have one set of videos and reports, and a lot of it on social media, saying that there is a complete surge in cases. People are dying in large numbers, etc. And then there are other reports from China saying that everything is fine, it's just a mild uptick in fever cases, and that's what's going on. Now, is it becoming difficult to understand what to believe, and can those reports emanating from China be believed?
It's very tough to know what's going on the ground in China because the flow of information is restricted coming out of there. So the government tells their side of the story. It's not easy to get accounts from individuals that are either uncensored or not politically motivated in their own way. So we're really guessing, and that becomes really problematic. When you don't know what's going on, that is literally the definition of uncertainty. Uncertainty gets expressed as volatility, and that's what happens when. That's kind of why the market jumped when we saw what seemed to be the positive news that China was reopening, and then the harsh reality is coming out that this might be a real problem. And as you mentioned, especially with the Lunar New Year coming up, and people typically migrate around the country, there's probably big demand for internal migration within China. And that, I don't even want to get into, I'm not a doctor, I'll leave that to the doctor to explain, but that could have real ramifications in terms of the spread of COVID. And so this is a terribly uncertain situation for markets. And because of China's role in the world economy, thus the entire world has to pay attention.
Obviously markets are going to be a bit jumpy. The Dow, though, has opened 300 points higher today, and those tensions seem to be receding. But this is definitely a story that everyone's watching because you don't know what's happening next. I want to go to Dr. Subhash Salunke, who's also joining us on the show. Now, from the Indian perspective, you've heard from the health minister saying it's not over, be careful. There is an advisory, not a mandate, but an advisory to wear a mask in crowded places, public or indoors. And there may be some screening of people coming in from China. Is that going to be enough From the Indian point of view, is there any risk right now?
Obviously, it's not only from the perspective of India, but it is now a global perspective. And China is a triggering kind of a country, not only for present episode, but even the first wave 2 years back. It is this country which triggered the pandemic. So we have to keep in mind that the number of cases, those are being reported, even though the number itself is not known. But however, from the media report, it is clear indication that the spread of infection is taking very rapidly in China. There is also a point that need to be noted that the efficacy or efficiency of the Chinese vaccine seem to be in doubt. And number two, about the coverage of the vaccination within China's population also seem to be a question as far as the efficacy of this vaccine itself is concerned. Compared to the Chinese, this kind of an uncertain situation, from our perspective, that is from Indian perspective, there are 2-3 very, very positive points from the India's point of view. One is more than 2 billion population, or more than 2 billion doses have been given, first and second dose, to the Indian population. Even though the booster dose or the third dose uptake is definitely much lower, hardly 20-22% than our expectation. Still, covering 2 billion plus doses itself is a fascinating and very positive kind of an intervention that we have done. Number two, 99% of Indians are either got naturally infected, and so it resulted
Okay,
into
I think if I'm not mistaken, the fear is that a large number of infections in such a huge number of people could give rise to a new mutation. And that's a new wave. Isn't that the actual fear?
Absolutely. That is the reason what is happening in China needs to be taken very seriously, even though from India's perspective, we are definitely better protected than China. That's the perception. However, when such large number of infections are taking place, the mutation that is likely to take place to the existing circulating virus can definitely infect rest of the world, including India. You cannot, at this juncture, you cannot stop people coming from China. People need not come only from China directly to India. They come via different countries. So all international traffic, air traffic cannot be halted at this stage. That is not a wise thing to do that. And as a matter of fact, intervention from Government of India to do random sampling is one good intervention at this stage. At the same time, within India, we need to know, because right now there are cases, active COVID cases are there in India, in many states, and we need to know what kind of a subvariant of the virus is circulating in India. And from that perspective, carrying out the genomic sequencing is a very, very crucial step. So we start doing surveillance at the airport. We have sentinel surveillance in the special hospitals. We must know what type of virus subvariant is being likely to impact us. At this stage, I'm not panicking. I don't want anyone to panic as far as India is concerned. But at the same time, we have to prepare. There is still a great opportunity for us to ensure that we are not going to get caught into a kind of complacency, because there are many positive points as well as there are negative points.
We're tracking this BF7 variant. In fact, there was a confirmation from Vadodara earlier this evening that one passenger from the US has tested positive.
But that happened in October. It's not now. So, this particular variant in Indian soil is not yesterday's or last week. It has come in October. So, I can assure the audience through you or your viewers that we are much better prepared than what we were 2 years ago, or the first or second wave. So I think overall, the preparatory steps that have been initiated by Government of India and also the advisory given to the state government is an indication that we are not going to just say, okay, everything is going to be honky-dory, but we are keeping ourselves absolutely alert and
Yes.
ready to face the situation.
I want to understand how big a factor is this for markets and for Indian markets especially, Mr. Baka, is, because what we've been seeing is that a bit of, it's a mix, right? There's recession fears on the horizon. Towards the end of the year, volumes also start to dip, so all of that mood is also there, inflation concerns, etc. So how big a factor do you think the China story plays?
It's sentimental for us to a large extent, because when the sales happen in global emerging market funds, we will also get it. So somebody might be reducing China exposure by selling off their gem funds, but India will get 15% of those sales. We saw a negative print on the foreign investors today, which was high on very low volumes, on 5,000 crores of volumes, sales and 4,000 of buying. We saw 1,100 crores of outflows, so which was surprising for this last 15 days of the year. People who had to sell would have mostly sold out, and we saw a sharp fall in the banking sector, so which is the most liquid sector, which is doing spectacularly well as far as the profit projections are concerned. So it was more a liquidity driven outflow that happened today. So that is the second order effect that sets in, Tamanna. It's not that we are very linked to the Chinese economy. Yes, we have a huge trade imbalance with them. They supply a lot of goods to us, but there are alternatives to that. Some segments like API prices have really shot up because China is trying to hoard now the pharmaceutical ingredients for its own use. So the API prices are shooting up. That will have some impact down the line. But unlike, say, a Korea or a Japan, which gets immediately impacted with a Chinese slowdown, we are not that connected, but we are connected through the flows into emerging markets. Second, the sentiment, the uncertainty that's abounding. Now, today, Japan had 200,000 cases, Korea had 80,000 cases, US is regularly having about 8 to 9,000 cases a day. So it's not that Corona has gone away. India is, yesterday we had 129 cases, our active cases are 3,500. So we don't have an issue right now. But we have seen in the first two waves how fast it catches up. Hopefully it doesn't. But the markets issue is the supply chain issue of China and the flows issue from China. If there is an outflow from China, we do see that India also comes within that ambit.
Um, Specifically on supply chain issues, and Ajay Baga spoke briefly about APIs. This question for Steve Sosnick. Isn't the concern on the pharmaceuticals front? There's already stories of hoarding of ibuprofen. There are people talking about whether that pipeline of APIs, etc., will be clogged from China. Is that one space you're going to be looking at very carefully?
Oh, yes, we have no choice but to look at that very carefully. One of the things that I think we lose sight of is, there's the talk of difficulty getting children's medications or ibuprofen or things like that. That's because there are other viruses circulating here that normally circulate during the winter in the US. We have flu season, and not everybody gets vaccinated for flu. We have RSV now, getting kids, and quite frankly, there's all sorts of common colds, which people really haven't been out and about this much in 2 years, so they're getting exposed to them for the first time. So almost everybody I know is walking around coughing, sneezing, and parents, of course, are very concerned about their children, so they're stocking up on medications, and the stories that they're hard to get make them that much harder to get. Going forward, and that's the short term. In the longer term, I do think this has implications for other countries that can be sources of manufacturing for the world, and India being one of them. There's been a move over the last couple of years to try to diversify away from China, just diversify away because the world was so reliant upon one country. And I think we're starting to see a lot of production move to other places. And I think one of the stories for India investing over the coming years will be how can India benefit from this, move away from China. But in the short term, yeah, this is problematic because it raises the problems that a lot of the world's raw ingredients, or a lot of the early stage and even later stage manufacturing, is coming from one place, and they're dealing with issues that really they haven't dealt with for some time.
All right, so the China story needs to be watched very, very closely, but it's unpredictable right now. In a sense, China is experiencing what we did earlier this year with the Omicron wave, but maybe their vaccines are not holding up as well. And that's one big takeaway from the story. Thank you.